If you have a mother-in-law, my guess is she's not going anywhere for as long as you're married to the man, until the day that she physically leaves this earth. So I think that it is necessary for us to have regular conversations about how to improve upon those relationships. While I have discussed this before on TikTok, I only discussed it from one particular angle, which I'm going to expand upon that today based on a letter that I received. This letter is coming from a wife who has quite the difficult relationship with her mother-in-law. It says, "Hey, I just watched your video about mother-in-laws. I've been battling with what to do with mine. I hate our relationship turned into what it is now. I really am lost with what to do now, or if I should do anything at all. Would love to hear someone else's take or advice on the situation." That was all the context that I got from that. I wasn't able to seek any further clarity, but I'm going to do my best to answer that. So the video that she's referring to, I was talking about how your mother-in-law is not annoying, and I gave some perspective. I will link that video below this video for context. But your mother-in-law is not annoying is what I was saying. She's basically in a state of, it's more so that you have to be sensitive to the situation. In the most healthy situations, women are not traumatized and have all of these unhealthy and unrealistic expectations of their sons, and these things don't happen. But we live in a society where sometimes that is the norm. We have some mother-in-laws who, even if they don't have an unhealthy relationship with their sons, they have unrealistic expectations of them. I also want to throw out that most of us are aware of the monster that our mother-in-law is before we get married. So if you have a woman who you're not getting along with before the marriage, and your husband or your soon-to-be husband is not putting her in her place, is not creating boundaries, is not protecting you, I hope you know that that's not going to change when you get married. And if he is putting her in her place and checking you and she's still doing it, I hope you also know that she's likely going to continue to push the boundary when you do get married. So a lot of us will glamorize these things. I'm actually reading a book about this right now, about relationships. It is a fiction book, so it's completely fiction. It's not a real story. But the main character is a widow. And we're basically finding out all the things about her marriage as the story unfolds, because when her husband died, he was a high profile guy and she was very private about their life. And we're trying to figure out why. But there are some things that happen in the story that if it was my daughter, I would have kind of led her against that. I know you love this guy, but look at the relationships in his life. He was very influenced by his older brother. His mom was a single parent, because his dad died when he was very young. She never remarried. And they were very protective of their son. And there was some not strange, but just some things in the relationship that she could have avoided if she had paid attention to the fact that he did have these relationships that were probably not going to change after marriage, and they didn't. In fact, he was very protective of his brother to the point where when she said something about his brother in anger, he slapped her. And so, and that was the first time he had ever hit her, right? And so that tells you a lot about that relationship. And so, not to venture off too far into that story, but just to make the point that I am fully aware, and a lot of women accused me of being tone deaf, but I think that it's just a sign of the immaturity of our times. When you choose to marry into a family, you marry everything that comes with that family. That's just the way that it is. People were trying to argue me down about this. I'm not married to her. I'm married to her son. That is true. And now that is your focus of a family, your immediate family that you create. But his extended family is now your family as well. And so if you want to get along with those people, you have to figure out a way to do so. And I think that the reason that I got so much pushback on this topic is the reason that I get pushback with a lot of other topics. There's no personal responsibility. We don't want to take accountability for the choices we made. We're not willing to look in the mirror and say, I knew this was going to happen because this is what it was like before. Or we're not willing to say, I saw the signs, but I ignored them because I was in love. I think it's very rare that people bait and switch. I'm not saying it's impossible. I know bait and switch happens. But I think that if you were baited and switched, you should also know that when a person says these things, they're not really referring to you. And that goes back to another video that I made about this particular point. But most of us did not get the bait and switch. Most of us saw exactly what it was, whether it's the man that you married, whether it is the people in his life, the habits that he had. We saw the signs before. So if you have a mother-in-law who is very nasty toward you, very toxic, you knew she was like that before you married her. And I'm I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm not trying to say you made the wrong decision, but I'm saying that no situation is perfect. Every situation has things. You married her son, and now you have to deal with his mother, right? Because this is something that you are aware of ahead of time. And so I don't want to harp too much on that, but I do want to talk about what I think the solution is. And the solution is not going to be perfect. It's not going to land you in eternal bliss. And this also connects to the topic of unhappiness in marriage. It connects to the topic of selflessness in marriage, because there are certain things we get very selfish and entitled. And we tend to think, and I said this before, because society paints the picture that marriage is all for the woman. The wedding is for the woman. Everything leading up to it is for the woman. It's all glitz and glamour. It's our big show. It's our big day. And so we carry that subconsciously into our relationships, and we want our husbands to do exactly what we say when we say it, how we say it. We want everybody to bend to our demand, and we're just very insensitive. So to elaborate a little bit more on that point in a different angle, a lot of times our mother-in-laws, and from the perspective of what I learned in that video, a lot of times it's the situation with the kids too. So we already don't want people telling us anything about our kids. Like, that's just a thing, right? Everybody's like, don't tell my kids nothing. Don't give my kids this, don't do this, don't do that. And I think to a certain extent, yes, everyone has boundaries. However, you have to remember that although those are your children that you physically had out of your body, they're grandparents. And grandparents are very similar to parents, because we're supposed to be a community where grandparents have an active hand in raising our children. But this is a topic for another day, because of how we are as a society and because of how individualized we have become. Everybody has their own life. Everybody has their own things going on. And so we take on this hyper independence role, right? Even when we think about biblical times, people were like tribes. They were very tribal, and they were together in a sense of even when in Genesis and in the book of Jasher, when they say son and daughter, sometimes they're referring to grandson and granddaughter. I don't know if that's because that term was not a thing back then. But for instance, Adam and Eve would have called the descendants of their children their daughters too, their sons too, because that's what it is. And so even when you think about how they moved around and when they separated from their families, they were separating with their entire house, right? Thinking about when Leah and Rachel left with Isaac and their dad, he said to Isaac, you were leaving with my children, not just referring to his children, the daughters, but referring to the offspring that they had. And so it's worth mentioning that too, because even though we are in different times, I think sometimes we can be very insensitive to the needs of other people because we have our own thing going on. So the first thing that I would say is your relationship with your mother-in-law, if it is toxic or strained, it would get a lot better when you pivot the way that you're thinking. Stop thinking of yourself as the victim. Stop thinking of yourself as she's always doing these things to me, and actually be considerate of her, right? Even if she's being the meanest little witch, think about the heart of the issue. She might be bitter that her son is moving out and living with this lady and he's been with her and that's her baby. Is that healthy? No. Is that your problem? No, but it is there. And if you don't learn to be sensitive to other people, you will never be able to have a peaceful life, and you will always have issues with people because there's always something. There's always people in your life that are going to have issues. And if you can just be a little bit more distant from the way that you feel about things, especially when it's not really necessary, like in this case, would you rather go the rest of your marriage angry and argumentative with this lady, or would you rather bend? Would you rather give in? Would you rather figure out a way for you to peacefully exist? Because again, I've already addressed that you're here now. I think the best thing to do if you're a girlfriend or a fiance and you notice that you have a monster-in-law, don't get married, because it's not about the man at this point. It is in a way, because if he's not protecting you from his mom now, you're probably going to have issues with other things. He probably thinks, oh, that's my mom. It's just, and he's not very direct about putting her in her place. You're going to have this same issue when you get married. So don't move forward without addressing it. Don't move forward without asking him like how he plans to deal with that situation, and understand that how he plans to deal with it, if he chooses to deal with it, if he doesn't, That's going to be a lifelong decision that you have to live with. And I think the more we have conversations about this, the more we raise awareness about the preconceived notions about marriage, all of the prerequisites and all of the things that you should pay attention to before you get married, the better off we would be. Now, I know everybody's not going to have a Naomi and Ruth type relationship with their mother-in-law. I'm not even talking about positive relationships, because there's nothing to say there. Those situations are doing just fine, right? So the second thing that I would say is, when you have the awareness and you can take yourself away from it and say, what is it that she's feeling? One of the things that I noticed is that they just want to be involved. I've never had, my mother-in-law was the sweetest lady, right? But I did notice that there were times when she felt like, especially once we had moved away, she felt like she wasn't as involved with the kids, right? And so one of the things that you can do is involve them. And I know a lot of people say, I don't want to involve her. Last time I involved her, she did this, she did that. She's so horrid. That's why we don't deal with her. All of those things may be true. And this is what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's experience. I know that there are mother-in-laws who are terrible. But my question is, are we going to take those situations at face value and try to figure out what it is that we can do? Or are we going to live our entire life having beef and enmity between the woman who is the mother of our husband and the woman who is the grandmother of our children? You tell me which one makes the most sense before you argue with me. And so, yes, there are, I truly believe that there are toxic situations. Do I believe that it's the overwhelming majority? No. I think some women are just so selfish that they take these situations and they morph them into things that they shouldn't be. Because I do not believe that the overwhelming majority of women who are grandparents and mother-in-laws actually are trying to be evil, because they know that you are something that stands between them and their son and them and their grandchildren. So I do think that sometimes we're being selfish and we just don't like the habit of having to deal with another person, because mother-in-laws are grandmas and they can be overwhelming. They can ask a lot of questions. They can make unreasonable suggestions. They can offer you unsolicited advice. Are any of those reasons that you should not deal with a lady? No. I also know that there are women who are harmful. They have been trying to be destructive in your marriage. They have been trying to do all of these things to tear you and your husband apart. Those situations, you take that up with your husband and you figure out how to deal with it. I'm talking about those situations where it is not necessarily even toxic. It's just an annoying situation, right? But that does not make her evil. That does not make her mean. It just makes her mildly irritating. And we can deal with that, because you deal with mildly irritating people everywhere else. This is the same thing that I say with our husbands. We can be so short and so mean and so dismissive with our husbands, but we go out into the world with the irritating people at work, your boss who never shuts up, all of these other situations, and you're so sweet to these people. Why can't you do the same thing for your husband? Why can't you do the same thing for your mother-in-law? This is somebody that you're doing life with. And so it also is worth mentioning that your husband probably feels a way that you don't get along with his mom. Okay, so let's also address that, because again, I think we don't stop and address those things because we're very selfish. Even if you don't think that you're selfish, and I know you're selfish, before you say, no, I'm not, I know you're selfish, because whenever an issue is brought up to you, instead of taking that issue and be like, oh, okay, I hear you, let me see what I can do about that, you say, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? And you know what that's stemming from? That is stemming from you trying to protect yourself in a situation, you not wanting to hold yourself accountable, you feeling like the reason that he's upset or she's upset is not as valid as the reason that you're upset. So if I ask you, are you being sweet to your mother-in-law? You say, well, she's not being sweet to me. You're selfish. Why? Because you can't step outside of yourself long enough to say, I'm not being sweet to her. I'm not being sweet to her because honestly, she doesn't make it easy for me to be sweet to her because she's mean. I can work with that. What I can't work with is, well, she's a BI to me, so why should I have to be nice to her? Because I already know that it's just nasty. Your attitude is nasty. There's nothing I can do with that, because you don't even have the accountability or the self-discipline to say, you know what, I'm not being that nice to her. And I can tell you I'm not being nice to her because she's mean to me. Maybe I shouldn't be that way. Maybe I should be. But yeah, that's the reason, right? That's very straightforward. That's very direct, but it's not. You see the difference between those two situations? That's what I'm trying to point out. And so when you can separate yourself and say, okay, this lady is annoying. This lady does the most. This lady is overbearing. What's the next step? Include her in things, like I said. And so when you open the door to allow her, especially if she's an overbearing mother-in-law, which is what I talked about in the video that I'm going to link below. If she's overbearing, she is feeling a need to aggressively push her way in because she's not being invited in. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time. So invite her places. Maybe take a day of the week where you just spend time with them. I know families that don't have these issues are families that prioritize spending a lot of times with the mother-in-law. I have one of my very best friends. I've always admired her family. Like, even growing up, I admired her family. Parents always been together. All their kids are from each other. They don't have any outside children, and all of their kids are now married with other children, with other children. And they regularly go back. I remember, like, when my friend still lived in town, she actually lives out of town now with her husband and baby, okay, and another one on the way. When she lived in town, anytime that I would go over there, her brothers would be there with their wives, because she got married last. She's the youngest. Her brothers would be there with their wives and their kids, and I think it was a regular thing. They had family game night. They had all of these things going on. So her mom, as a mother-in-law, never felt the need to be overbearing because she was included. She was respected as the matriarch of the family, right? Do I think that these things are better when the mother-in-law has a husband? When the parents are together? Yes, because typically mother-in-law who has a husband is more so concerned with her husband, especially if she has a very healthy marriage, right? But sometimes even in those situations, it's still like, it's icky. But I do think that we eliminate the need for them to overstep boundaries, to be overly involved, when we allow them to be present grandparents, and when we invite them lovingly, not just like, oh, I need them, so I'm gonna go over there. Not just whenever you need them, but invite them in, allow them to take part. Think about, if you have a healthy relationship with your mom, as much as those kids see your mom as excited as you are to deal with your own mother, you need to extend that grace to your mother-in-law, right? And again, this is not the easiest thing to hear, because if that lady doing me something, I want to be mean right back to her. I don't want to extend the energy, but that is your family. Like I said, if you can go and be nice to Miss Pauline at work every day that you don't like and that's mean and nasty, you can be nice to your mother-in-law. Stop it. If you can do those things for the sake of your job, you can be nice to your mother-in-law for the sake of your relationship. She ain't gonna be here forever. Relax. And so I think that those two things really do help. And when I say include her, I mean lovingly. You hear me? Like, if you're gonna do game night, if you're gonna do Wednesdays, we go to Grammy's house and we make brownies. I don't know, whatever it is. If you want to do Tuesdays, we go to the matinee and we bring Grammy with us. Whatever it is that you want to do, however it is that you want that situation to play out, go through with it. The scripture, if I had to pull scripture for this, it would always be fruit of the Spirit, because you, as a person who is of God, walking in the narrow path, you should always be doing these things anyway. The problem is, when we talk about these things in regard to our close relationships, we're unable to do it. We're not able to separate the two. We're not able to do it and just get through it when there's nothing to gain for us. Like I said, at your job, you would never, or very rarely, get into it with a coworker or your boss because you need your job. But at home, the gloves come off. Why are you going to war with a woman who's on your side? She might not seem like she's on your side. She might seem like she hates you. But at the end of the day, y'all are family, right? And so I don't know exactly what your situation is here, because you didn't really disclose it. But I do know that, just like I talk about the approach to your marriage and the way that we should be changing, the way that we should be holding ourselves accountable, the way that we should be pouring the things into our relationship that we want to get out with our husbands without trying to change them, you should do the same thing with your mother-in-law. Now, she's another woman, so it's a little different. She might still be stinking bitter. She might always have an attitude with you. But our reward comes in good doing, not in playing get back, not in seeking vengeance, not in they go low, we go lower. Like, that's just not the way that it works. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like every mother-in-law is perfect, because I know, like I said, I know that there can be toxic situations. I know that there can be situations where they overstep boundaries, where they're a little bit too overbearing. But I want to encourage you, and I want to remind you with this video and this topic overall, you married into that family, and those are now your family members. Whether you like those people or not, it does not matter. What you need to do is figure out a way to cohesively blend and to coexist with those people. There can be conversations had with your husband. You can be open, transparent, and honest with your husband. You can tell him, look, I really don't like the way that your mom behaves. I really don't like that she does this. And you can allow him to decide if he wants to step in or whatever. But if he does not correct it, again, you also have to own up to the fact that that is the man that you married, and this is the situation that you are now in. We always want to pretend like there's some magical piece for us to get out of the situation that we're in. But a lot of times we don't focus so much on everything that matters. We're just like wedding, marriage, let's go. But in another video, maybe I'll unpack this. When we get married, we need to look at all the fruit of the tree. We need to look at every branch. We need to see what it is that we're getting ourselves into, because we're going to be married and like formed, infused with this person. And so that comes with everything that they do. So if you marry a man that doesn't have a job today and he has a track record of quitting every job that he's ever had, you can't get upset 12 years down the line when he's unstable and he doesn't have stable income to take care of you, or he still doesn't have a job, or he still doesn't get it together. Does that mean that every man who's unemployed today is going to stay unemployed? That's not what I said. Because you can marry a man who is fresh out of college, never had a job, but he just got his degree. That shows that he can commit to something, doesn't it? So if you marry your college sweetheart and y'all both are figuring it out, I'm pretty sure that man today is going to be better than he was yesterday. If you marry a man who started a business and the business isn't making money, but he's been doing that business 3, 4, 5 years and he's just making enough to get by, but he is keeping it all in his business, you can probably guarantee yourself that that's a stable man. So I wanted to make that clarification too, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying marry the bag, because I'm never saying marry the bag. Money does not buy or change a man's character. Money makes you more of what you already are. If you're a greedy person, money, you're going to be even more greedy. If you're a mean person, money, you're probably going to go 10 times wicked. Like, that's just the way that it is. So it's not about marrying the money, it's about marrying the situation. I'm talking about character here. So again, if you marry a man or you're dating a man, engaged to a man, and you notice that his mom is always coming at you and he never corrects it, if you marry him, that's what it is. And now we're here, okay? So if we're here in this situation and you married him and you have this nasty mother-in-law, I think that it would be more worth your time to just try to make peace with her. Try to make peace with her. Don't cause problems with her. If she is extremely toxic and y'all decide to cut her off, please know that this video is absolutely not for you. But I do want to say that a lot of times we try to pretend like we can't solve these problems amicably. We try to pretend as though we're the victim. We try to pretend as though there's no reasonable solution to the things at hand. We try to act like these people are so evil and wicked. But oftentimes it just takes for us to take off our hard-heartedness, to be a little bit more tender, to be a little bit more accepting, to be more wavering in our ability to compromise. And that's a part of being married. So I would say that, one, if you're struggling with your relationship with your mother-in-law, I would also want to know how your relationship is with your husband, because a woman who truly loves her husband is going to try to figure that situation out with his mother, because she's not going to want her husband to feel tension between him and his mother. So if you really do love and care about your husband, it would be worth it to take the time to repair the relationship with his mother, or at least behave with benevolence. Okay, and that's all that I have to say about that. I hope that you listen to this and you're not like completely offended and ready to throw your phone out the window, because I know this isn't the most comforting thing to hear. This isn't the advice that you probably wanted to hear. But I do think that this could change your situation. I do think that it can make it a lot better. I just think that what it's going to take is for you to not be stubborn, for you to not be hard-hearted, and for you to take a little step back away from selfishness and think about the big picture. Think about your family and think about how you behaving in a different way toward that woman over time is going to more positively impact your family. And that is it. Wifey school is closed, y'all, but enrollment will open up mid-March, so keep your eyes out for that. If you missed enrollment and you want to be reminded when it does come around, be sure to grab the Wifey Bingo. I'm going to link that in the bio below, in the description below as well, so that if you want to be the first, or you want to know about that before it happens, I do send emails when enrollment opens. If you do not want to enroll, but you just want to buy one of the journals and you work through it on your own, that is also okay. I will leave the link below to that as well. Just be sure to read the descriptions thoroughly so that you know what you're signing up for. There is Wifey School, which is interactive. There is a Wifey Challenge, which is the physical book and all the materials that we use in Wifey School without the course. And finally, we have the Wifey Journal, which is the downloadable version of that if you don't care to have like a physical print. I think that's all the announcements that I have. Yep. I'll see you in the next video.